Hello and welcome to the BucketLister Podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the BucketLister Podcast. I am your host Keith, and today we've let her back on. It's amazing, but we are back with Sian today from the BucketList company as well. Hello Sian.
Hello Keith. I mean, now I've taken the podcasting world by storm. Where should I send my fee for this?
I would just keep it in your back pocket for a minute, okay, and then we'll.
Fine.
So we decided to get Sian back on today because one of the destinations that we've never really discussed on the podcast, and one that's close to home, like, we've done podcasts on Nepal, in Tanzania, in South America, and actually we do some trips. Is that a word? We do run some trips closer to home in Europe. And one of the ones that I really wanted to talk about, which is kind of taking the travel world by storm a little bit, is Croatia. And Sian, you led one of our Croatia trips last year, so I thought, who better to bring on than Sian? So where should we start with Croatia, Sian?
Croatia is such an underrated country, in my opinion. The guests that I took away last year all had the most amazing time. And I think the one thing that I would say about Croatia is I completely underestimated what it can offer in terms of adventure, multi-activity style adventure holidays. I had this kind of impression of Croatia, which was completely wrong. And to say I was blown away by what it offered us is a bit of an understatement. So, yeah, I'm excited to talk about that with you today, Keith. You've not had the pleasure of going yet, have you?
I haven't been yet. No, it's you. So you went out on our recce trip, didn't you, in a couple of years ago now, and sort of built the trip up. And then you went and led the first trip as well. Dave subsequently done a trip for us as well. But I think the thing that I love about Croatia is the fact that A, it's quite a short trip. B, is the fact that it's not a very long flight compared to the majority of our other trips. And then finally, I think is a great little stepping stone for people to take to get into adventure travel, in terms of it's more soft adventure than it is hard adventure. There's no multi-day trekking. It's a different activity each day. You're traveling around quite a lot, so you get to see lots of the destination. And I think you do, it's one of those trips where you could just tick off so much in such a short period of time.
You're so right. I think this is the sort of break that you come away from feeling like you've really had a break, that you've gone away, you've ticked off multiple things from your bucket list. You are back home refreshed and revitalized. And the trek experiences, you come back with that sense of achievement. You've summited a peak, or you've done something that's quite hardcore. Croatia and Montenegro, the adventure is more like you coined the phrase soft adventure. We talk about soft adventure quite a lot in the office, to really talk about those things, maybe things like kayaking, whitewater rafting, things that are a little bit kind of adrenaline heavy but aren't hard to do. So yeah, I think it is different from some of our other trips. Also having the two countries within one trip is really cool as well. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we get further into the podcast. Excuse me. The customers that are booked on Croatia and Montenegro, like me, came to Croatia with some preconceived ideas of what it was going to be like. I think we all had that sort of Game of Thrones image in our head, the things you expect to see in Dubrovnik, Croatia and Dubrovnik being very famous for being the set of Game of Thrones. And it's now very heavy on the tourism around Dubrovnik for people going there to see those sorts of things. But outside of Dubrovnik, it really, to me, it had lots of kind of Mediterranean influences there. It felt almost like, very, very Mediterranean in terms of the food, the climate, the people, the way of life. It was very chilled. When I was more north in Croatia, it had more of a kind of an Eastern European flavour. So, from sort of Zagreb down to Split, there was that sort of feeling. And then when I got to Split, it was almost like I was somewhere like Santorini. It felt like there were all these different influences all the way through the country. So diverse is one thing I would say about Croatia, and absolutely not what I was expecting it to be. Outside of the city as well, the people are just so friendly. They've got so much time for you. They'll chat to you about anything. And the food, well, that's just a whole other conversation.
Okay, so in terms of fitness levels then, for someone to come on to or go on to this trip, what do you think their fitness levels would need to be?
So this trip is a challenge rating 1, which is our lowest challenge rating. And it's really, if you are fit and healthy, you will be able to come on this trip. There isn't a high level of physical exertion. There are opportunities to go and hike. One day we go up from Camp Grab in Montenegro, hiking up over the Tara Canyon, which is an absolutely beautiful hike, but it's not strenuous. You start off at the top, you're not going right the way up the canyon. You start at the top. So, and it's kind of through these wooded areas. We came across bear poo. And I was like, oh my God, why did I not know there were bears in this? I feel like I should know. Someone should have told me there were bears here. So it wasn't overly strenuous. It was a comfortable trek. Other things like the rafting. You need to kind of be willing to put yourself forward for it, I would say. You learn how to whitewater raft. You learn how to use the paddles. I'm always really conscious to say paddles and not oars, because last time I said oars, you wanted to hit me.
Thank you very much. This is why I'm allowing you to come on the podcast.
Yes,
exactly.
Your
terminology is getting better.
So you get taught how to use the paddles. You get taught how to control yourself if in an emergency situation. But again, it's not the sort of thing that is overly strenuous. I would say, if you had mobility issues or was a little bit worried about it, just give us a call in the office, and one of us would be able to talk you through what you need. On one of my trips to Croatia, we had a lady with a little bit of mobile impairment, and she managed everything. There was just one thing, I think she didn't do the bike ride. We went out bike riding on Sian Island, across from one side to the other. And she just decided that she probably could have done it, but she said, you know what, I'm just going to get a taxi over. I'm going to enjoy the day a little bit more. And we've got to remember at the end of the day, these are people's holidays. And if they don't want to do anything, there'll be a way around it. The other strenuous part is the kayaking. So we do go out kayaking, which is just a wonderful way of seeing the islands. A pretty special way of seeing the islands, actually. And we kayaked around Lopud. We saw these limestone cliffs. We jumped off of them. We did some, cliff jumping. And then we went through and did some snorkeling in the caves there. So, yes, there is activity on all of our trips. There are activities, but as long as you're fit and healthy, you'll absolutely be able to undertake them.
Okay, so do you want to give us just a brief rundown of the itinerary from day to day so people can kind of visualize it in their heads? Absolutely.
Yeah, so we meet the group at the London airport, and you will find one of us in our bucket list tops, and we will get you through security, take you over to Dubrovnik. Once we arrive in Dubrovnik, our in-country provider partner will be there waiting for us, and we'll transfer to the ferry terminal, which is you get to see Dubrovnik just very, very briefly as you transfer through. But don't worry, we're coming back to Dubrovnik. You won't miss out on that. And we get the ferry over to Lopud, which, to me, it was really funny when I saw that on the itinerary. I thought, oh God, transfer. It's going to be ages till we get to our hotel. But it was wonderful. You get off of the flight and to get on this ferry around a Croatian island, like it was pretty special and very chilled. It was a really nice opportunity for the group to sit around and chat and, have a coffee and just work out who was who in the groups. That was really, really nice. We then head off to our hotel, which is on Lopud Island. It's right by the beachfront and there's loads of restaurants that you can go to. So Lopud Island is car free. The only way of getting around the island is by bike, which I just loved. I thought it was pretty special. So went out walking that evening. You can go and find yourself a nice bar, somewhere to eat. And the whole group stayed together, had a beautiful fish dinner, and then we went off and had an early night. The next day we went and found our kayak instructors. So took the group down to where we needed to be. And we had some instruction on how to operate a kayak. We then got all of our safety equipment, transferred the kayaks to the harbour, which was literally like 2 seconds, and took the kayaks out. There was only a couple of people that fell out, but actually it was more so on purpose. And they're very, very safe, very easy to operate. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the kayaking experience. I thought it was going to be a lot more tiring than it was, but it really wasn't. We had a day kind of paddling around. We went off and did some snorkeling, as I said, in the caves. We got these incredible photos. So like we'd gone into the cave and our in-country partner, Ivo, he's a great young guy. He was standing up in the cave and he had our guests kind of dive down and he took photos through the water with the light coming from the back of the cave. So these photos just look incredible. And actually on our website, I think the thumbnail photo on the Croatia and Montenegro trip is one of those photos. And we all got a special photo with us. It really was quite a cool wow moment. So the second day we paddled across to Sian Island. So not as far that day at all. Got off on Sian Island and we cycled across the island to this incredible fish restaurant. Again, this is one of these things when people say to me, what is the benefit of traveling with a group operator or somebody that knows the country? It's things like this restaurant. So we would never have found it on our own. And Ivo took control of ordering and just said, guys, you can have whatever you want, but I really suggest you let me order. And when it came out, it was just these baked fish on a platter with loads of Croatian olive oil. And that's one of their specialities, the olive oil, and loads of bread. And it was dipping it in the juices and loads of salad. And it was just one of those beautiful moments where we all sat around, and people had a glass of wine and, drinks and just chatting. And it was just lovely. Cycling back across the island to pick up our kayaks to go back to the hotel, we actually had a proper wow moment on one of the bucket list trips. And I would say it's probably one of the best wow moments I've had, which was we were kayaking back and Eva all of a sudden went, oh my God, look. And there was a pod, is it a pod of dolphins or a school? It's a pod of dolphins, isn't it? And they just decided to perform for us. Just, who can say they have kayaked around a Croatian island and had a pod of dolphins swimming with them? So, that was really amazing. And I tried to pretend that, we'd put it on as the bucket list company and we'd paid the dolphins handsomely in fish, but nobody was having that, Keith, unfortunately.
Well, we can only try.
We can try, absolutely. Day 4, we transferred back to Dubrovnik. And we actually now we've adjusted the trip slightly. We go out to this farm. It's a family-owned farm. We pick some fresh produce. They teach us about how they cook it and how they do proper farm to fork in their house. And that's a lovely, beautiful cooking experience. We then transfer onto Camp Grab, which it's quite an unusual name, but because it isn't a camp. It's a hotel guest house, but it's in Montenegro. So you go across the border. It's about 4 hours, that transfer. So, sit tight and watch the beautiful scenery. And Camp Grub really is in the middle of nowhere. It's on the River Tara, which
just
is...
a quick one on that one, Sian. Did you need to do anything passport-wise? Is there a border?
There is a border, yes. That's a really good question. Again, I dealt with all that as a group leader. So I just collected up passports. I made sure... I know now that the border force require things like a list of everyone's date of birth, a list of places of birth. So I had all that prepared. So it was as easy as handing it over, giving them what they needed, and then we'd be on our way, not being caught in traffic or in big border queues. So again, another benefit of being with a group tour that know what they're doing. Going back to the Tara Canyon. So again, not having been there before, I had no idea of the magnitude of the Tara Canyon. The Tara Canyon is actually the second deepest canyon in the world, second to the Grand Canyon in Las Vegas, Nevada. So anybody that's been there or has seen, probably, they're much more famous, the shots of Nevada and the desert there. If you've seen how deep that is, the Tara Canyon is the second deepest in the world. And the next day, we actually rafted through the canyon on this glacial river. Didn't proper clock the word glacial until I fell out of the raft into the water, which was certainly quite a bracing, waking up experience, I would say, Keith. It's exhilarating for anyone that hasn't whitewater rafted. I know you have, and you have done it quite a lot. You've just come back from Morocco actually on whitewater rafting, so you know what a proper wow that is. I love it. I just think there's nothing more exciting than hitting that whitewater.
Yeah, no, it's just absolutely amazing. I think, it's one activity that I just get this feeling that anybody can do. And although it looks quite extreme, because you're part of a boat with other people, you just feel part of it without really needing to do anything. Like, you do spend more time when you're whitewater rafting, not actually doing anything. Like people think it's like hard all the way through. And when I took the group to Morocco, they were like, actually, this is quite easy. I thought it'd be a lot harder than this, because for the majority of it, it's not constant rapids all the way down. There's like nice flat bits. And then as the river drops, you might have to do a little bit, and then you can chill out again and look at the scenery. But yeah, I think, it's one activity that I think no matter what your fitness levels, whatever your sense of adventure is, that actually you can do it quite easily within your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's such a great activity. I think watching the group go from being a little bit apprehensive and sort of, oh my God, where are we going on this, to just, it's almost like you find your inner child when you're whitewater rafting. I found myself like squealing with delight, like, oh my God, like the water kind of coming up. And the first couple of minutes, you get a little bit of splash and you think, oh God, this is freezing. And by the end of it, you're just embracing being like smacked in the head with water, just laughing at it. It's just brilliant. I came away from that feeling like I'd had a proper core workout because I'd laughed so much. So that evening we spent again at Camp Grub. It's run independently by the most lovely people. They brew their own wines, and they did some wine tasting for Dave's group. I don't think it was ready when my group were there, but we sat around the campfire, which they'd set up for us downstairs. They had this huge fire pit, and we just sat around chatting. It was a really beautiful experience, and it's right next to the flowing river, so it couldn't be more beautiful.
And do you, because the activity is just like a morning activity, isn't it? So in the afternoon, you get a bit of free time on that day where there are other activities you can do, or you can just chill out and do nothing.
There are other activities. The group did a couple of things, actually. Some sat around reading, some went on a little like mini hike. The guys that own it sounds really stupid, Keith, saying it when people haven't got any context, but the guys that own this, I said it's independently owned. They had the most beautiful dog, and he was just brilliant. And some of the guys just took the dog out for a walk. And it sounds so basic, but you are literally in the middle of nowhere. And it was a very pleasant, relaxing afternoon. Like we said earlier, this is a multi-adventure trip. There's lots going on. And after, a couple of days of kayaking, of cycling, of walking, you'd been to Dubrovnik, you transferred and whitewater rafting. Actually, to have an afternoon of downtime was pretty cool as well. The following day, we got up and we went on a short trek to just above the Tara Canyon to Piva Lake, which, as I say, it's not like you're climbing all the way up the canyon. You kind of go up, you're almost at the top anyway. So it's through this beautiful forest. It was a very, very easy hike. So anyone listening thinking, I'm not into hiking up mountains, it's absolutely not. It was a very easy hike. It was warm. So, take lots of water and make sure you bring some snacks or something. But it was doable and very enjoyable after a couple of hectic days. That evening, again, we had some beautiful food prepared by our hosts. It's such wholesome food, it really is from the land. They haven't got anything else there. I think the nearest supermarket, they told us, was about 3 hours drive away. So everything is fresh and homegrown, which is a real pleasure to enjoy. Following day, we we're on our way back into Dubrovnik, but we stop at Kotor Bay. Now, Kotor Bay is the ferry, where the ferries dock from Montenegro. So usually it's quite touristy, which is why we book our adventures at the time we do, because it isn't so touristy. The cruise ships aren't in dock, or unlikely to be when we're there. We're not there in the height of the summer season. I thought Kotor Bay was beautiful. There's like a city wall that you can walk around. You can climb up and see the city from the top. It's very touristy. It felt quite like Dubrovnik, in as much as the architecture and what there was there. There was a market there as well, so people bought lots of souvenirs, and there was, inside the city walls, lots of restaurants. So we had an afternoon there where people could just chill, have some food. They could go and climb if they wanted to, or they could just enjoy being by the marina. And then we transferred back to Sabtat, where we kind of wandered around the marina that evening. We again had lots more food. I mean, this is a real foodie holiday as well. Found an incredible fish restaurant for our last evening, where it's kind of family style sharing dining, and everyone enjoyed that as a last evening. So then the following day we returned to Dubrovnik, and we're very sadly back in the UK, all planning our next trip. that's another.
It just sounds I think those sort of trips where you can cram them in, it's an 8-day trip. You're only going to need 5 days holiday annual leave. It's a short flight, so you're not spending a lot of that time flying, and you get to see so much. I think it's just almost like a perfect trip, isn't it?
It really is. There's no other trip that I can think of that throws as much activity in as the Croatia and Montenegro activity. You get the balance of like the UNESCO World Heritage Site with the adrenaline of the whitewater rafting. You get the beauty of the outside, matched with kind of seeing two countries. And the other beautiful thing about the Croatia and Montenegro trip is the kind of the opportunities for add-on adventures, because like you say, it is a shorter trip. If you did have more annual leave, you could maybe stay on and go a bit further north. You could visit Zagreb. You could, on the way up transferring, you could go to Plitvice Lakes, which is a huge national park with some of the most outstanding waterfalls and open water that I've seen. We don't include that in this trip purely because of where we fly into Dubrovnik. It would just take too long to get back up there. But when I speak to customers on the phone, if they are looking to extend their trips, I would always say try and get a little bit of a stay around Plitvice Lakes, and then maybe fly out of either Split or Zagreb. Split as well is a beautiful place. It's on the coast, but we chose not to include that because we have some more coastal stay on this trip anyway. But again, if you are visiting Croatia and you wanted to fly out of Split, then that could be arranged. Similarly, you could hop over to Slovenia. You could do some open water swimming in Lake Bled. That's on my bucket list. I haven't managed to tick that off yet. So being over that way gives you so many opportunities to go elsewhere. All that you would need to do is book that as a land-only package with us and just book the flights around what you want to do. I think, like you said, having this trip as a shorter trip works really well for people. It is only a 5 days of annual leave if you include the weekends, which makes it really, really accessible and actually one of my firm favourites, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of, you don't actually just need to think about any group travel trip, not just with us, but with any organization as your holiday, because it could almost form just part of your holiday. So, like with us, we do have the option of, the land only package where we would meet you in country, or we can cater for everything for you. Most other people, you would meet them in country anyway on theirs, and you can then extend your trip however you wish. So, for example, if you were in South America, you don't have to just think a Machu Picchu trip is your holiday. You could be doing a tour of South America where you go, actually, I want to do that part as a group tour and do the trek with a group. But actually, then I'm going to go on to the Amazon and do that bit by myself or whatever I want to do. And I think, like you say, with Croatia, that works really well because, everywhere is quite close around there. Like you said, you've got Bosnia over the border. You've got you've got Slovenia just over the border as well. You've got a lot more to see in Croatia. I mean, we stay right down the bottom of Croatia on our trip. Like you say, going further north, there's plenty more you could go and explore if you wanted to on your own, or just after doing a multi-activity trip for 8 days, you might just want to go and say, well, I'm going to go and find a beach and sit on a beach for a few days and finish my holiday off that way. So the land-only option sometimes, I think, is a really good option for people.
I think when we first set the business up, Keith, most people booked the all-encompassing package of UK leader, meeting you at the airport, taking you to the country and bringing you back. But when we looked at the stats a couple of months ago, both of us were really surprised that actually it's something like 50-50 now, isn't it? Half of our customers book land only, meaning that we once they arrive in the country, we sort their transfers out for them. So somebody meets them at the airport and gets them to the hotel they need to be at. And then they meet our UK guide, but actually they've got themselves there and then they get themselves home again. And I honestly think it's for exactly this reason that our tours, our trips are forming part of a bigger adventure. I spoke to a guy yesterday. It's funny you chose South America as your topic, as your example there. And he wanted to fit one of our Lares treks into a bigger kind of tour of South America. And he was trying to work out, he was in Colombia and then he was going to go to, I don't know, I can't remember where he said he was going to go next. And then he was trying to fit it in. So it's just an option. The other thing we found post-COVID was people were booking land only because they had vouchers. Do you remember when trips were credited and they ended up with lots of vouchers for EasyJet or BA and they wanted to use them. So we were like, well, okay, we'll just book land only and actually use your travel voucher to book on the flight. And I was emailing people saying, right, this is the group flight we're on the 6:30 from Gatwick. People were booking on exactly the same flight with their own vouchers, meeting our guide at the airport and happy days. So, there's many ways to skin a cat, so they say.
Well, I mean, we should do a podcast one day on American Express because if you are a keen traveller, then you should all have an American Express card in your pocket and claim your points towards your upgrades and whatever. And and in your air miles as well. I mean, there's so many ways to get a discount on a flight. And I mean, and the problem sometimes is it's a completely random flight, and you might find that you end up with a couple of extra days in a country because the only time you can get on that vouchered flight is 2 days before the group fly out or whatever. But there are always plenty of options when it comes to flights. And I will say that, you know, we've sort of been having this conversation in the office quite a lot on flights, and you know, flights have taken a massive increase in price since COVID. You know, we've seen, you know, for some journeys haven't even come back, and then for others, you know, they are a lot more expensive. But generally, there are a lot cheaper options out there if you're not willing to have a massive layover. I mean, that's one thing we've just. I mean, we obviously try not to do that and do the shortest possible flight we can do. But if, you know, you are looking to save a bit of money, then sometimes actually if you're happy to sit in an airport for 8 hours, you can save yourself some money, can't you, Sian?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I are massive fans of the Amex. We almost have competitions to see who can save as many points. And, you know, if you are using it's not just Amex, there's lots of different ones, isn't there? There's BA do a credit card where you can get Avios points. There's loads of different ones, but Amex, both of us think, give the best flexibility. You can use all sorts of airlines on there now. I think Emirates are on there, Qatar are on there, all of them. So actually, if you're using your Amex for your daily spend anyway, for the coffee you buy at the station, for, you know, your groceries in Sainsbury's, then
fuel cost, petrol, like all of those things.
I mean, we both put everything on it and then just pay it off at the end of the month, as if you'd spent it anyway, and you just accumulate so many points. They do, you know, when you sign up, you get a bonus. If you spend a certain amount in your first 6 months, you get a bonus. And before you know it, you've got enough for 2 flights to, I think, Barcelona I got in my first month. And I was like, this is brilliant. So me and Mark can go away for the weekend and it's a freebie. And there's nothing better than a freebie, right?
No, there's nothing better than a freebie. And if you recommend a friend, you also get points as well. So if anyone wants a recommendation, please come and see me.
Sian at the BucketListCompany.co.uk.
But I mean, going on that subject, I mean, like I have 2 Amex cards. I have the normal Amex, and then I have my BA Amex. And the BA one's quite good because you get if you spend over £10,000 a year on your BA Amex, you then get a companion voucher, which means any flight you book, you get another one for free. So actually the BA one's quite a good one to have as well. So I kind of shuffle between the two really, but I think we can always do a whole episode on.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, whilst this isn't an episode about Amex, and I'm certainly not on commission for them, the other bonus you do get with an Amex card is that you get your access to airport lounges. So you can use any of the airport lounges, and they are worth it. You know, if you are going to be spending 3-4 hours at the airport, you get your food, your drink, it's all complimentary. So things like that, they do make a difference.
I think it depends which Amex card you have. I think with the
I got a posh one.
I think with the platinum one, you do get, because I think maybe with the gold one, you only get so many visits a year.
I'll sign you in on mine then.
I've got that one. You're all right. I'm in the same. But anyway, Sian, thanks ever so much. We digressed from Croatia, but what I will do is I will put a link into the show notes for this podcast to the Croatia trip so you can have a look. From there, you can download the quick guide, which shows you everything, all the itinerary, gives you more information on the trip. There's also a really cool video from one of Sian's trips on the webpage as well, so it gives you a real flavour of what the trip will look like. Obviously, thank you ever so much for listening. This podcast is growing, which is because people actually come back and listen to it, which is great. But if you could like and subscribe to the podcast, it will let you know as soon as our next episode becomes available. So, and also, if you could, just go and leave us a nice 5-star review as well, because that also does help push us up the rankings a little bit and makes more people aware of how great this podcast actually is. So again, thanks ever so much, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the BucketLister Podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.